this is Narelle from Sew Society with Knit Tips 6. We're going to be doing a different finish on the neckline of our shirt this episode. Last time we did the Chanel trim around the neckline. Well, this is going to give you another option, and this is what we call either using a self trim, which is the same fabric as your garment, or using ribbing. Rib knit is another name it's called, and it will be a double edge trim. So we're going to fold it over and stitch it on like that, so it will be very similar to, or be the same as the regular finish on a normal t-shirt that you purchase. There is a little bit of a difference this time because you do have to cut your trim to suit your neckline. So before we get to that stage though, I'll just show you on, this is a finished garment here, and this is the one that has got Chanel trim finished on it. Just like you to pretend that this Chanel trim is not there, and we have a raw edge on our neckline, and we're going to mark it out so that we can attach the double trim. So to work out where you're going to match up your pins on your trim, you need to put a mark, a pin. I like to use a pin, and I also like to use those water or air erasable felt pens, because if your pin falls out, you've still got your marking there. So you put a pin and a mark at centre front and centre back. Then you match up those two pins, and where the fold is, that's your quarter mark. And you can see that it's a good way down from the shoulder seam. So your shoulder seam isn't your quarter mark. So you just do it that side, come over here to this side. There's your quarter mark there, and there's the shoulder seam there. So if you hold it up by the shoulder seam, you can see that the pins are down lower than the shoulder seam. So I've done that on the garment that we're going to be attaching the trim to. So I'll just put that aside. With the double trim, as I said, you can use either the self trim, which is just your single knit, or you can cut a piece of ribbing, and we're going to be putting the ribbing on today. This is just a piece cut across the width of the ribbing. Ribbing comes tubular, it's knitted, and it's got no selvage, so you've got a fold on each end of your ribbing. So you just cut straight across the width of the ribbing. So that means the stretch is going around your neckline. This is just the piece that was left over after I cut the right size for the neckline. I'll tell you shortly how to calculate the amount that you need. So what you do is, after you've worked out how much you need, we're going to just stitch the seam allowance, just join it into a circle, and just using straight stitch. Nearly all of the sewing is straight stitch unless I mention it otherwise. So just anchor it. Okay, so I've left the yellow colour in there so that you can see where I've stitched it. And then we're going to open the seam allowance out. This is very soft ribbing. Then we're going to fold it over in half all the way around. This will be your first pin mark, so you put a pin in there, hold it up, and put a pin in the opposite side of your loop, just like we did around the neckline. Put a pin there, put those two pins together, and then that's your quarter mark on each side. Okay, so to work out how the length of the piece that you need, you do have to cut it to size. I've already got mine cut here, and I've got it ready to stitch on to show you. But what you're going to do is measure all the way around the neckline. I like just to hold the tape measure up on its side when you're doing that. So if you hold it up like that, and then just walk it around your neckline. And my neckline is 71 centimetres or 28 inches. Now the calculation for working out the length of your trim, if you're going to be using ribbing, it is 2/3 of that measurement. As I said, my measurement was 71 centimetres or 28. So the ribbing, 2/3 of that amount is 47 centimetres or 18.5 inches. Then you need to allow your seam allowance because we're going to join it up into a circle. It'll be 6 millimetres on each end of the ribbing, or 1/4 inch. So with all that calculation, I have cut this ribbing 48.2 centimetres or 19 inches long. If you're going to be using your self trim, it doesn't stretch as much as ribbing, so you cut this one at 3/4 of the distance around your neckline, and then of course you add your seam allowance as well. So because we're doing ribbing, it's 2/3 of the distance around your neckline. And as I showed you before, you hold the centre back, which we're going to put where the join is on the ribbon is going to be on the centre back, and we then match the marks on the quarter way around the ribbing circle with the quarter marks on your shirt. And then don't forget the seam allowance goes towards the back. So I'm going to start stitching, and I'll just show you how to put this on. And I'm going to be using this yellow thread, but if I was doing this on a garment that I wasn't doing a demonstration on, I would have colour coordinated thread. So I would have black thread on the top and yellow, or this mustard colour, on the bottom. Okay, so what we're going to do is then just do a 1/4 inch or 6 millimetre seam allowance around this neckline, and we're going to stretch the ribbing so that it will then fit around our neckline. So I like to hold it here where the next pin is, and then with my other hand I then just make sure that the ribbing and the raw edge of the neck are equal, so that it's nice and neat when you're finished. So just start off there at the centre back, anchor the stitch, and we're doing 1/4 inch or 6 millimetres, slightly wider than this foot. Most feet are 1/4 inch or 6 millimetres from the needle to the outside of the foot, but this particular foot is just slightly narrower, so I'm just making a little bit wider than the width of my foot here. And go around, and I'm coming to the first shoulder seam here, so I'll make sure that I press the seam allowance to the back. Right, and then just pull the trim down to make sure that these edges here are nice and neat. Take the pin out, continue. I like to make a mark, as you can see there. I've got some white chalk that I have used just in case the pin came out, and this is the tailor's chalk that I use. It's not white, it's actually like an apricot colour, but it's light colour. I can't use the air erasable ones on this because being black you wouldn't be able to see it. Okay, so I'm up to that 1/4 mark now. I've taken the pin out, then I hold the next pin, which is at the centre front, then halfway along I hold the trim, make sure that the raw edges here are even. You can see I'm not stretching the garment, I'm only stretching the ribbing. Okay, so I'm going to just keep going around all the way around the neckline, and then I'll be back as soon as I'm finished. Alright, now this is finished. Just trim off this thread here. And you can then have a look at your work. And there you are. You can see that your ribbing is sitting up nice and upright, so that when you have it on, it'll actually sit up nicely up against your skin. And then what you'll do is either use your zigzag or go to the overlocker and overlock those two edges together, the edge of your rib trim and the edge of your neckline, and go all the way around. If you don't have either of those machines, you can just go around with another straight row of straight stitching on the seam allowance side, like that, just to give it some reinforcement. And you can see I'm stretching that and none of the stitching is popping. So after you then go and do your overlocking or your machine neatening of the edge, just take it over to the iron. Now don't iron, just press it. So again, with steam, you just put it onto your garment and hold, move it up and then let it down a little bit further around, and then go all the way around your neckline. So there we are. Just turn this around the right way. You can see that the center back seam is there, and see how nicely it's sitting up. Now it's sitting up because we stretched it. That's the whole secret of it all. Well, that's all I've got to show you with this particular neckline finish, and on the next video and next edition of Knit Tips, we'll be looking at finishing off your armhole and inserting sleeves into the knit fabric. I hope you've enjoyed this video. See you next time.